Between 2017 and 2020, Uber reported nearly 10,000 cases of assault and over 120 fatalities linked to its platform in the US alone. The reports cover a wide range of incidents from minor disturbances to outright murder, but the case we're about to cover pushes far past the numbers. An Uber driver in Michigan is suspected of going on a rampage, fatally shooting strangers in between taking fares. As many of you read, 6 people were gunned down in a rampage in Kalamazoo. Entirely overwhelmed by the situation, the Kalamazoo police force starts receiving frantic 911 calls by the dozen. Police know a 14-year-old girl named Abbie Tiana survived and is in critical condition. If she can stay alive, she might be able to help stop the Uber killer. The 14-year-old was shot at the Cracker Barrel parking lot, along with 4 women who were all killed. At the hospital, Abigail was pronounced dead. Unfortunately, the 14-year-old has passed away as well. While doctors prepared for organ donation, she squeezed her mother's hand. It's 10 p.m. on February 20th, 2016. 14-year-old Abbie Tiana sits at a Cracker Barrel table with her best friend and surrogate grandmother, 68-year-old Barbara Hawthorne. Abbie's calm, thoughtful demeanor often surprises others. She's always felt more at ease around older people. The pair had just come from seeing a play downtown, and now, joined by 3 of Barbara's friends, they're sharing a meal and having a good time before heading home. As they step into the parking lot, Barbara reminds Abbie not to miss their upcoming knitting class together. The young teen sits in the front passenger seat, and Barbara prepares to drive the group home. 2 of the other women sit in the back, while another steps into a van parked beside them. The teenager is chatting with her grandma when the sound of screeching tires interrupts them. Outside, a black car parked itself behind the vehicles, preventing them from leaving the lot. A loud bang pierces the silence outside. Everybody in the car starts screaming. The teenager knows she's in danger. She rolls up between her seat and the floorboards to hide. Seconds later, even louder bangs are heard. Shards of bloody glass are sent flying everywhere inside the car. Abbie doesn't have time to grasp what is happening before noticing that Barbara is now covering her hiding spot with her upper body. Through the broken window behind, the teenager sees the barrel of a smoking gun pointing right at her. 5 hours earlier, everything seemed fine in the lively city of Kalamazoo. It's winter, but it's warm outside and the snow is melting. Far in the suburbs, 25-year-old Tiana Carruthers is babysitting her 7-year-old daughter, Kenia, her niece, and 3 other kids. Tiana had her daughter when she was still a teenager and raised her on her own since then. When Kenia asked if the group could go outside to meet a friend across the street, her mom accepts on the condition that she'll tag along to keep an eye on them. Tiana and the girls' walk is interrupted by a man speeding down the street in a silver SUV. It screeches to a stop right in front of them. Behind the wheel is a heavy-set man with disheveled gray hair and wild eyes. He looks straight at her and bluntly says he's here to pick her up. The tone of his voice feels off. Keeping her calm, she says she didn't order an Uber and tells the kids to continue walking. The SUV peels off, tires screeching again, but suddenly it circles back. Tiana freezes. In seconds, the vehicle's back in front of them. The moment the driver starts pulling something out of his jacket, the young mother orders the kids to run. She sees that the man has a gun. He points it straight at the children. Although she describes the moment as being almost in slow motion, there's no time to think. 5 children are in danger, including her own daughter. Without hesitation, she steps in front of them. Following the shooting in the suburb, the Uber driver escapes before swapping guns and vehicles. For the remainder of the evening, he alternates between running fares and coldly shooting people at random. The driver, who the police quickly identified as 45-year-old Jason Dalton, shot 7 people before targeting Abbie Tiana, the 14-year-old he gunned down in the Cracker Barrel parking lot. Now standing between life and death, things could have gone way worse for the teenager if Barbara, her surrogate grandmother, hadn't intervened to protect her. One of the women shielded Abbie with her own body and took 3 shots. Barbara and Abbie are both in critical condition. First responders rushed them to the hospital, doing everything they can to keep them alive. Despite their efforts, Barbara dies shortly after arriving. Abbie, however, makes it to the ICU in time. Bronson's Children's Hospital contacts her mother Vicky, hesitant to tell her what happened to her daughter. "Oh Lord, where was she shot at?" And they wouldn't answer me. And I said, "Do I have time to make it there?" Tell me right now, is she dead? And the lady on the phone said, no, she's not dead. And I said, then where was she shot at? And she said, well, honey, it's serious. And I said, where was she shot at? And she said, she was shot in the head. We made it towards the hospital, and they had the hospital locked down. They walked us up to this room in the ICU, and that's when I saw Abbie for the first time. Abbie's head is wrapped in blood-soaked bandages covering where the bullet has shattered her skull. Vicky later describes the scene as akin to the worst horror movie she could have imagined. An hour later, Abbie flatlines. Doctors call the time of death. Vicky can only look powerless as the nurses unplug her daughter from the monitor and pull a white drape over her lifeless body. Vicky and her husband lie over the teenager sobbing, muttering their final goodbyes, while the nurses prepare for organ donation. It's then that the desperate mother feels something strange. She's sure of it. Abbie just moved, and I said something to the nurse, and she said, honey, most bodies twitch after they die. She said, it's normal. And then I thought I felt it again, and I said, could you please just check her? It'd make me feel better. Pulse. Somehow Abbie's heart starts beating again. Nurses and doctors soon flood the room. Vicky can barely contain her excitement, but one nurse gently pulls her aside and tells her not to get too hopeful. Even if Abbie pulls through, she may show no signs of brain activity. I was holding Abbie's hand, and I looked right at her, and I said, Abbie, if you can hear me. I said, this is Mama. I said, if you can hear me at all. I said, give me a sign. And within a few minutes after that, I was sitting there, and then all of a sudden, her hand just slightly went like that. She was trying to draw the letter B in the palm. She was asking about Grandma Barb, who was killed in the shooting. Police believed she shielded Abbie, taking 3 bullets in the chest while she pushed Abbie down. She saved Abbie's life. After mercilessly shooting Barbara and Abbie, Jason Dalton plays cat and mouse with the police around the city. Cops pull over 10 vehicles matching the description of his car, desperate to find him, until they begin to tail one that's driving suspiciously. It seems to be trying to avoid them. A short but intense car chase ensues. Then the car suddenly pulls over. Jason had proven himself to be extremely dangerous over the course of the rampage, and the police are expecting the worst. The officers, clad in body armor, guns in hand, slowly approach the vehicle, expecting bullets to be flying their way at any moment. They are completely caught off guard when Jason slides his arms out of his window to surrender. Following the arrest, investigators shift their focus towards Jason's mental state. They have all the evidence they need, but if Jason's found legally insane, he could avoid prison altogether and turn his sentence into a relatively short hospital stay. The police don't want Jason to stop talking, so they indulge him in his demonic possession story. According to him, his phone turned into a horned devil head that took over his mind. With each interview, he becomes more erratic. No one in the police force is buying his story, but they hit it well, and the Uber killer slowly opens up. Eventually, they get him to talk about the attack on Abbie, Barbara, and her friends. Going over the events in reverse, investigators coax Jason into discussing every crime he committed. Still, he justifies each of his actions by bringing back his demonic possession story. To counter his insanity plea, they'll need a witness who could actually testify to his mental state during the killing spree. 14-year-old Abbie survived, but was placed in a medically induced coma for her own safety. As Jason goes on about his crimes like they were accomplishments to be proud of, he eventually brings up his very first victim, 25-year-old single mother Tiana Carruthers. Tiana's body had been riddled with bullets. Both her legs and her shoulder were shattered. One of the rounds even lodged itself inside her liver, where it should remain for the rest of her life. Paramedics arrived just in time to stabilize her before she bled out. Doctors rebuilt her clavicle and lower body with bolts and metal. She then spent months in rehabilitation to regain the ability to walk. When she was well enough, she began giving interviews. An Uber driver in Michigan is suspected of going on a rampage earlier this year, fatally shooting strangers in between taking fares. Now, this tragic story made national headlines. Now, during all of the chaos, my next guest risked her life to protect a playground full of kids. Please welcome Tiana. Expected to testify at Jason Dalton's trial in 2019, Tiana quickly became a hero in the eyes of the nation. Them 4 kids you was babysitting, they living cause of you. The rest of them kids in the parking lot that you told them to run and don't come back, they living cause of you. That's cause of you. At that first shooting scene a year ago, it was Tiana Carruthers who shielded several children from the gunman, risking her own life. She was hailed a hero. 6 people were killed by Dalton. Without Tiana, the death toll could have been much higher. 3 months later, the court assembles for the preliminary hearing. Tiana is the first witness called to the bench. The tension is at its peak. As the sole survivor able to testify, the weight of the entire case is upon her shoulders. Tiana's suffering is laid out for all to see. The judge gives her some time to compose herself before they resume the proceedings, but her trauma seems just too much to bear. Yet she soldiers on, trying to